If you're someone that looks at your most recent social media post and thinks to themselves, why the heck am I not getting more engagement than this? Then, well, this episode is for you. And if you're someone that looks at your content and thinks, why in the actual heck did this post blow up? But my other heartfelt, hilarious post completely flopped, then this episode is also for you. Moreover, if you're someone that looks at the absolute trash that seems to gain traction on social media, then you guessed it, this episode is for you as well. Because today I'm interviewing someone whose podcast does triple my numbers and has never once needed to use video to do so. She is the co-host of the Marketing Happy Hour. She loves Tom Brady, Spider-Man, and Disney. It's Cassie Tucker. Cassie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Travis, and thank you for that grand entry and for highlighting the nerdiest parts of myself. I really appreciate that.
I stalked your Twitter from that you haven't posted on in a while, but
I love it.
I was like, I'm going to grab things that she likes.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And you have like exquisite taste in Tom Brady memes. I will put that out there.
Thank you so much.
All right. So as tradition, I've got an opening clip to show you to kick things off. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
There's too much content.
Keep scrolling, you'll never reach the end.
We were never meant to hear every single person's thoughts, opinions, and advice. I'm never gonna make my own dishwashing soap. Never gonna optimize my VO2 max. I'm never gonna understand the battle strategies of the British colonists in the French and Indian War. Everyone's a creator, expert, and a comedian. We're all leveraging the same jokes, formats, narratives, and strategies. I'm so sick of man on the street interviews. I'm so sick of she's a 10, bud. So sick of hearing what it's like to live in San Francisco as a 33-year-old software engineer, product manager, or PR professional. I'm even sick of my own stupid videos that follow the same format and use the same sound every time. I'm also very dizzy. We're all bloated cows and social media is milking us dry. Sayonara, folks. I'm going to scream at the sun.
Wow. I need to follow this man. That is hilarious.
So I showed this video to my team and they were just like speechless. They were like, it's funny, but it's sad.
It is, because it's true.
Yeah.
It's literally the voice in my head every single day. And so I completely resonate with it.
As a content creator, the first time I saw this, I was just stunned. I was like, he so perfectly captured why this can be so tough. And all of those things I was listing at the very beginning, where you have a post that you're like super heartfelt about and nobody likes it. And then a post that's complete trash where you're like, why did this pop off? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about how to make engaging content, or at least attempt to, with authenticity. And it's a little depressing. I won't lie. That
It
clip
is. Just slightly. But that's okay. It's reality.
Okay, I do believe there's a lot of good that can come from being your authentic self and attracting like-minded people. My first question for you is, what is the most approachable content you yourself have come across in the last few months, and why?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. I would say the number one thing is something that gives me an escape from my day-to-day, my life, my work. I love marketing content on social media, and I will consume it when I need to get inspiration, but when I'm looking for an escape, I'm looking for nothing to do with that.
Preach.
I am like on TikTok scrolling, looking at dog videos and Disney videos and Tom Brady videos and all of those things I'm interested in. I don't want to see anything to do with work. And so I think people that give me an escape is usually the thing that's most approachable to me. And TikTok is just that. I love TikTok right now. It is one of my favorite platforms. And so specifically with brands, I would say Duolingo. You and I have talked about Duolingo. You guys talked about it on the podcast. Yep. Duolingo to me is doing such a great job at creating approachable content in a way that isn't super salesy and doesn't push downloads for the app. But the thing and the reason why that works is because I'm so entertained by them as a brand, but the next time I need to learn a language, guess who I'm going to? I'm going to Duolingo because they kind of stick out in my brain.
Yeah.
And then also there's so many creators out there too that create really approachable content. It's relatable, it's fun and entertaining. Erica Priscilla is one of my favorite creators on social. Okay. Highly recommend her stuff.
Erica Priscilla, okay.
Yes, but the thing I love about her, she does a lot of brand partnerships, but they don't feel like brand partnerships. And so I feel like she does a good job at weaving in kind of that relatability, and it's still true true to her and herself, but
Yeah.
she's selling something at the same time. So it kind of works in that way.
I hate to throw it out there, but back in the day when I was in college and before he became who he is today, I actually really liked the way Joe Rogan used to do his advertisements. And it was because like it felt like he's actually using these products in his real life. And then you're like, well, I admire him. I like what he's doing. And the stuff he's describing and the pain points I want to like resolve, this product can or service can do that for me.
Yeah.
I love what you said about escapism. And I think that there's something there. We could probably do a whole other podcast episode on this idea of a lot of people want to create a media company at their, at their company. And it's like create content that's not just educating your buyer. Yeah, do all that stuff. But what if you experiment with some content that's a good break or a good escape for folks? And I think that's what Duo does so well with their craziness is like people are they're opening their phone, they're opening social media to be entertained.
Yeah.
Sometimes that entertaining can be serious, like they want news, or sometimes it can be educational, they want to learn something. But that all gets, in my opinion, lumped into like escapism, entertainment.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
You don't want to address whatever emotion you're in.
Yeah.
You're bored, you're tired, you're curious, and you're like, I'll scroll.
Yeah. Yeah. Me, every single night, I look forward to it. I'm laying in bed before I go to sleep and I'm just scrolling and it is my happy place and somewhere I want to be at the end of a stressful, crazy day. So yeah, thankful for TikTok right now.
All of the digital minimalists are cringing right now.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't be. How can Cassie give her recommendation to scroll before going to bed?
I know. Sorry, guys. I'm not good at taking the recommendation of no blue light for 3 hours before you. Like, I just can't do it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like,
sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
You and Erica seem to have nailed creating a community by using your personalities. What's the secret sauce? Is it consistency, humor, education? What do you chalk it up to?
Yeah, I'd say all of those are definitely included into that. But I think the one thing that's kind of worked to our advantage is the relatability aspect. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of the marketing podcasts out there are all about the C-suite executive who is gone to the top of the ranks. They're the CMO at Disney, Microsoft, like all of these big aspirational companies. And they're talking about the success they found and how great that success is. But we found that there's kind of that gap where there's no one telling their stories kind of along that journey and in the middle of that journey. And so that has allowed us to kind of create a community around the show because everyone's kind of in the same spot. Erica and I are in the same spot. We're millennials still trying to make it, still trying to figure out what the heck we want to do in the future. And everyone listening, we felt like is kind of in that same position as us. And so I think that's the biggest thing people have gravitated to. But also there's a lot of people from aspirational companies that are maybe not at that CMO level, but they're able to share, okay, this is how I got in with this company. This is some of the tips that you can leverage as well to get to that spot. And so that relatability aspect has certainly helped us. But of course, we weave in education. There's a ton of marketing tips and career tips that we share as well. And we try to be as funny as possible also, but kind of all of the above. But yeah, the community aspect for us has been so huge for growing that.
Are there any comments that you've gotten or messages from folks who've listened to your show that really stand out as like, that meant so much to me hearing that? Or like, man, that's the best compliment you could give me?
Yes. So actually one of the kindest things that we received was just a full email of feedback from someone. I feel like that's almost a lot more personal to me. I love when people promote it publicly to their friends and followers. That means a lot to us too. But this girl took who knows how long to write this 5-paragraph email, sharing with us how much the podcast means, especially on her journey and her career. And Erica and I laugh at each other because we're like, what the heck? Like we literally, I kid you not, developed this podcast. We were sitting there's a restaurant in Tampa called Willa's. We were just sitting there at the bar for like an hour and we came up with this concept. We're like, like whatever, we'll try it. We'll give it a go. But people have really gravitated towards us telling stories, other people coming on the show and telling their stories as to where they've gotten to where they are today, and people sharing how much that resonates with them and how much they needed to hear that. It just keeps us going every single day with the show.
Man, I'm gonna have to like one day aspire to get a 5-paragraph email from someone.
I'm sure you already get them.
No, I get like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have joked about that disgusting thing on your podcast.
Gosh.
I'm like, oh, okay. Good note. Thanks.
Cringe.
Okay, switching gears just a little bit, but still in the same vein of like how to be yourself and also attract like-minded people. Over the last couple of years, you've started your own agency and you focus a lot on strategy and helping businesses to create more demand. What do you tell businesses that are like, Cassie, I just want clicks. I just need more social media followers. Like, make it happen. Take a deep breath and then...
I know. I have no words. I can't even, there's nothing to say back. No, it's a tough message or email to hear from someone. That is like something that I am so passionate about, educating businesses that the numbers are not where it's at. Yes, we want to aim to grow a community. We want to gain followers and get more likes on our content. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if we work towards just getting those likes and those followers, is that actually pointing back to your bottom line? And so for us, it's all about providing a solution and building a community around that, adding value to your audience. And ultimately, if you're speaking to that solution over and over again, you will ultimately gain a community of people interested in that solution and willing to engage with your brand and purchase from your brand ultimately. And so that should be the aim. And I feel like a lot of times too, when our aim is to just build followers and to get likes and things like that, we're only creating content to do just that. So we're capitalizing on a trend just because we saw X brand do it and we're like, oh shoot, I bet we could get 1 million followers or 1 million likes out of this. And so you just do it for that purpose. Whereas we should be working towards building a community and adding value to our audience and not just hopping on trends, just to hop on trends to get likes and to get followers. And so it's kind of counterintuitive towards the ultimate goal of a business. And so I try to educate that as much as possible without squashing their dreams, while that's also still a goal of ours. But ultimately, it's more of an authentic, engaged community. Yeah,
it sounds like it's educating, right? Like, so I remember learning this in therapy. When you go to therapy, there is the therapist's responsibility in some scenarios to give what's called psychoeducation, which is just basically explaining psychological research to the client so that they can better understand why we're going this route with that form of therapy. Like, here's what the research says. I'm just educating you on like the science behind this, so that you can have a better point of view and understand why we're doing this, not just, and it sounds like there's marketing education that happens with the client in a gentle way that's not demeaning or patronizing in any way. And I think ultimately, when I think about this and I'm faced with questions from folks who are like, well, don't you want more likes? Yeah, of course I want more likes. Everybody wants more likes.
Yeah.
But if all I'm doing is creating commodity content to fulfill getting likes, people can see through it. They can sniff it a mile away.
Yes.
Just like they can sniff if you're being authentic. And wouldn't you rather attract people who like you for you? Yeah. Not just because you hopped on some trend? Yeah. Because what's going to, in the long run, who's going to be by your side? Yep. Who's going to stay with you?
Absolutely.
Is it just the people who liked your thing because it was trendy, or because they say, wow, I really resonate with that person's solution, that person's personality, their trials and tribulations, their sense of humor? That's much more powerful.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately, too, with marketing, the goal is clarity, right? Of messaging and of offering. And when we're just hopping on every trend that comes our way, there comes to be a really inconsistent message about who is this person? Are they this dancer? Are they, did they capitalize on these trends because they're actually a dancer and that's part of their brand, or are they just doing this? And so you're right, it's very confusing to the consumer, and it's inauthentic in that way too. And I told a group of speakers the other day, I said, if you found out that 5,000 people were coming out to your speech, you'd get excited, right? But ultimately, when you get there, and there's only 100 people actually listening, you look out in the crowd and there's like 1 million people looking at their phones, they're not paying attention, only 100 people watching you. That could be discouraging, right? Because you're anticipating 5,000 people following and listening to what you had to say, but it's those 100 people who actually care and who are a part of your target market that it's disappointing to hear that 5,000 people aren't interested, or most of those people aren't interested in what you have to say, but focus on those 100 and grow from there and build a community around that group of people that you're looking to serve and to build an audience around.
It's a great example. It makes me think of the VMAs, the MTV VMAs, I think 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
The band Young the Giant was performing. And I remember hearing the announcers, or in between commercials and stuff, they flew in 500 of their biggest fans from their hometown to be up close and center. And I'm thinking how beautiful is that? Not just rewarding the people who have stuck with you, but also showcasing how beloved you are and in such an authentic, I remember being I want to go to Young the Giant concert. I want to be one of those 500 people that gets flown in. Are you serious? And the crowd, and they were wild. They put them all right up in front of the stage, and mosh pits, and the singer was stage diving and just stuff you don't normally see at the VMAs. And I was this is so cool.
But that probably made them feel so good. They're this is why we do what we do, to think about that core group of people that really care and really love them and have been there since the beginning. I think that's amazing.
And I think for brands that are listening to this thinking well, great, how can I leverage some of this stuff? If you're a social media manager, or you work on a content marketing team, or you're just trying to create content for your own personal brand, I think putting out content that isn't just always the same stuff. So for me, I'm not always just putting out posts about this podcast. Mm-hmm. I try to mix it up. I put out pictures of my dog. I put out pictures of me and my wife, vacations I'm taking. Not pictures of me crying. We'll get into that later in the episode. But I think there's something to engaging those diehard fans too, and giving them a taste of who you are. I feel if you can put out the occasional LinkedIn poll, but you can also put out a post of your team's gathering. Mm-hmm. People love to see that diversity of content.
Yeah.
And that's where the money's at.
Yeah. And the human side of your business, because ultimately I tell brands that I work with all the time, people aren't going to resonate to the service or to the product. They're going to resonate to the humans behind it, that storytelling element. And so the more that you can peel the curtain back, show off your team, show off what you're doing in your life if you're a business owner, that is going to not only build trust with that person, but it's going to allow them to see the authentic side of your business and really get to know you and understand the solution a little bit better, because especially when brands are creating a solution based off of a problem that they've overcome, that kind of is that aha moment. We can be kind of relatable with that brand too, and it makes us understand, okay, this person overcame this because of XYZ. They're using this brand now. They created this brand. Now I can use this brand to also overcome an issue that is very similar. And so it creates that relatability factor with the brand as well.
Yeah. Relatability equals trust and connection. We were talking in another interview I did with Kevin Kermis, and he quoted somebody. So now I'm triple quoting somebody where they, people come for the content, but they stay for the community. And I thought that was really cool. And from my world of software, software as a service, they come for the content, they stay for the product and the community. Yeah. Right? The product or service has to be good. Mm-hmm. I could love a social media post from a local restaurant, but if I go there and it's too hot, there's no music, and the lights are too bright, true story.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go back. Even if the food was pretty good, it was just the service failed to deliver what the content was showing me.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's so huge. I mean, you have to be kind of the one-stop shop for all of those elements. And you can easily, if you miss the mark on one of those pieces, you'll potentially lose a customer. And so paying attention to those different aspects and weaving it in, yes, you have something to sell, but think about the story that you can bring people into and the solution and value you can provide for them. And that's ultimately, and the community, of course, those are elements that are going to keep people following you, staying for more, and just loving your brand and purchasing from you time and time again.
Let's dive into authenticity 2.0, taking your self-awareness to the next level. Because in our pre-interview, you and I kind of talked about brands will put content out there and it's overly produced, right? And it's something I worry about because of how good this podcast studio looks sometimes, where it can feel like stiff and forced. I have a clip I want to show you with suggestions and ideas for creating good, funny, authentic content.
Awesome.
How can we start introducing more humor into our brand?
We used to teach a workshop a long time ago called Laugh Lab. One of the exercises we taught is that sometimes it's helpful if you want to start to think of funny lines. What is the worst thing someone could say about your brand? What's the worst insult you could have received? We used to call this thing insult yourself. And one of the gals had a company. It was packets of like superfood that were like put together for you in a package and you would just literally dump it into your smoothie. Some of her pushbacks were like, why would I pay you to do that? I could do it myself. Like I can get all these ingredients and package it myself. And so the pushbacks became funny around things like, but we know you won't. Yeah, says everyone January 1st. If you think about what the criticisms are, the insults or the pushbacks, what are funny rebuttals? I make my own smoothies and of course I'm going to dump in my own ingredients, but guess what? Most people don't do that. So they want kind of an easy process. It's funny to speak to who your audience is and sometimes it's helpful by knowing who your audience isn't.
What do you think about this?
So good. No, it's so true. I mean, the whole humor aspect that brands throw in that sass. I mean, I think it was, who were the first brands that did that? It was like Wendy's and on Twitter. Remember they would get into fights and stuff on Twitter. And that was one of the first times I ever saw that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, is this actually going to work in their favor? But people started talking about them. But also the thing that she mentioned that I thought was really good is allowing yourself to think about the criticisms for your brand can help you think about, okay, what are some of the messaging points that I need to talk about? So if someone's going to say, oh, I could do this myself, why would I pay you to do it? Maybe include that in an FAQ, like why is this beneficial versus just doing it myself? Maybe create content around that. But also don't ever be afraid to just like laugh with consumers and poke a little bit of fun. You know, don't be a jerk. But I think there's a lot of good and people will talk about that and that'll create a memorable moment in their mind too.
I remember talking with somebody in a really early episode. Gosh, I'm trying to remember his name, but Mark Young. He told me that if you're trying to figure out like a good place to start with humor and marketing, and you're not sure, and we'll get into this in the next segment. I'm getting ahead of myself. But if you're like, I want to push the boundary and I want to find the edge, but I don't want to get canceled by being too authentic, start with like Marvel humor. So for those that are familiar with like Marvel movies, right? We think about how you have Iron Man being very tongue-in-cheek and like bumping elbows with Captain America and, you know, being self-critical of each other. It's a good level of humor that's approachable and a good entry point, and you can kind of find where your level is. And then you've got companies like Liquid Death, the water company, where they do stuff with like porn stars and bloodletting and like they've figured out who their audience is and isn't. But I think I want to try to ask you if you can think of some insults for PandaDoc, knowing what you know about us and what we do. And then maybe I can try to come up with like the response to that where I'm like, yes, I'm aware of that.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, one that comes to mind, if I was a troll on Instagram leaving you a comment, I'd be like, an e-sign document company should not be this fun. And that would be my comment that I'd leave for you. Or, what do you mean there's a document company that can do everything for me online to help me send out contracts? Like, there's no way. And so that's the best I could come up with.
Okay. For the fun one, and you can give me feedback if you have better ideas than this, but I would say, like, if I were our social media manager, which thank God I'm not, because I would get us in a lot of trouble, I would probably say to the troll about, oh, like, you're being too silly. This is business. Can't have fun. I would say, like, oh, if you want to pay more money and not have any fun and get fewer features, you could go check out DocuSign.
So calling out your competitors then.
Their
Why
name's
not?
boring and stiff and serious.
Exactly.
But if you want to have a little bit of fun and but okay.
I love it.
It's there.
I know there's always been kind of a fine line with that, but I think that's kind of fun to poke fun at other businesses. And we've seen how we were talking about earlier about Wendy's, like other businesses similar to them, their competitors were getting involved in that conversation. And so it kind of, there's always that saying community over competition, which obviously McDonald's and Wendy's are head-to-head competitors. I'm sure they probably have this rapport that is not great among each other, but it's okay to kind of like have fun and to appease the community and poke a little bit of fun at each other every once in a while, and nobody gets hurt.
One of my coworkers that I interviewed on an episode was telling me about how actually, I think it was when McDonald's and Burger King teamed up together to do some charity work. And they were like, we're putting our differences aside. And I think like Burger King ended up donating like for every Whopper that was ordered, all of that revenue went to McDonald's, I think Ronald McDonald House or something like that. And that's great. Like teaming up with your competitor to like be like, hey, there's things that are more important than profits.
Yeah, and we need that encouragement and that positivity. And so to see, oh, McDonald's and Burger King can get along, I can get along with my worst enemy. And the world's going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. It's totally cool. And so I think that's great and encouraging.
Gonna be like, oh, so you want us to like go do charity work with DocuSign? Thanks for signing us up for that, Travis.
You're going to be like, Travis, new idea for you. Cassie loved it. You're going to do it. It's going to be your assignment next week.
Okay, so next up, I found this article on the mastering the art of self-deprecation in your brand voice. And I wanted to go over a few of their suggestions and just chat with you about them, because I think at the root of some really good humor and some really approachable authenticity in content is being self-deprecating, right? Like psychology says that I'm totally butchering this, but I did look up like literal research articles that were like, do you want to buy this? And I was like, I don't want to spend $47 on this research article, but I'll read the abstract. And it was just like, there is a lot of research that shows that self-deprecation is actually a sign of like greater self-awareness and humility. And those things will bring down, stigma. They will also make you more approachable. And those are things we want with content. In this article, for those that are just listening, one of the pieces of advice from the folks over at marketsmiths.com. You can check out the article, have it in the show notes. Don't humble brag unless you've got the chops to back it up. And then they've got, let's see, if we scroll a little bit more, they've got a Twitter image. Go back up to that. Yeah, shoes are boring, wear sneakers, Converse. I think humble bragging, when I see it and it's cringy, is because I'm like, you're not self-aware enough to know the own flaws in your product or service that you're offering.
Right.
And I think I agree with this one. What are your thoughts on trying to use humble bragging as like a form of relatable, funny content?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think it's totally fine. Don't do it in every single post, because that's when it's like, oh, this guy, he's always doing is talking about himself and how good he is and how successful he is. So don't overdo it. But I think it's good to have a little bit of confidence in what you're doing and what you're providing, because if you're not confident, people aren't going to be confident in what you're providing. They're not going to buy from you. And so a little confidence, a little humble brag is okay.
It's like the example we just did earlier where you were like, an insult I'm going to throw at you, PandaDoc, is that like, I need a serious company, not a funny, jokey company. And I humble bragged. But I think if I were to always do that and always defer to that as like a deflection, people will see right through it and be like, all right, dude, we get it. Like,
don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
It's
like
nice.
Rule of thumb.
Okay,
keep scrolling. The next one is, if you're gonna throw shade, offer a umbrella. I thought, I've never heard of that.
I love that.
That was cute, i.e. still be helpful. Don't be self-deprecating just for the laugh of it. Do it because the joke either highlights a point you're trying to make, a tip you're trying to share, or offers an opportunity to inform or assist in some way. I agree. I think if you're gonna like pull a Wendy's and just start pulling punches, at least have a good, like, what is the old saying? If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But
absolutely.
The other one is like, if you're gonna complain about something, have at least a suggested solution.
Right. Absolutely. You don't want to make consumers or the audience feel bad about what you're saying. And so if you're calling out an issue or something that they may be dealing with, a problem, that's fine, and do it in a fun way. But maybe say, hey, we got something for that. Have a Whopper, have a, Wendy's salted fries. Like, that'll make you feel better, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So provide something that's going to increase their confidence in themselves and uplift them. And ultimately, that's totally fine. So I agree with this one.
I think going back to the fast food example, there is, I feel like, I don't have the ad pulled up and I don't have this, but I feel like Taco Bell did this with leaning into like midnight munchies and people being like, if you're a stoner, especially like when marijuana became more like accessible and legalized and stuff in the United States, it was like being able to laugh at the fact that, people were going to Taco Bell for midnight munchie runs.
Yeah, I think it's great if used in the right way. And I think one way too to kind of test it too, if you have a content idea that you're like, this may toe the line, I'm not sure, share it with people outside of your space and just get feedback. And if they say like, no, bro, like Travis, you really shouldn't put this out there, then you'll know like, okay, cool, I like dodged a bullet. But when in doubt, just share it with people, get feedback. And but ultimately, if you're just having a little bit of fun, it should be okay.
Okay, let's wrap this up. This segment, the last question I wanted to ask was, why is it that overly curated content flops, right? We're talking here about self-awareness to the next level. That was something that you said in our pre-interview that caught my attention. Why is that?
Yeah, marketing back in the day, I think back to the early 2000s, everything was very overly curated. Even when Instagram first came out, it was highly produced video, photo. That was kind of the trend. But over time, I think people have really gravitated towards authentic content and getting to know people on a natural level. I don't think people really resonate with perfect. And so if you can kind of create an experience for consumers that shows that you know what you're doing based off of your authority, your experience in the space, the solution that you're providing is a top-notch solution, but you create an imperfect experience in a way by creating content that's a little bit more organic. People resonate with that way, way, way more. And so I think that's the trend that we're going to continue to see. Now, one thing that people say is, what about photographers? What about videographers who create highly produced content? That's what they do for a living.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But what you could do is you could leverage other portions of the platforms, for example, Instagram stories, and maybe showcase kind of the human side of who you are behind the camera, show your journey of traveling up the mountain to capture that shot and what that looked like. And so if that's your brand to create overly curated content, figure out ways of other parts of the platform to kind of showcase more of that organic piece of your brand, because ultimately you want to stay true to yourself, right? So there's ways to kind of balance that. And so I would just recommend leveraging different pieces of those platforms.
It's a beautiful example because I just recently got back on Instagram after a 2-year hiatus.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And one of the things I noticed was that I enjoy following like local organizations. So like I started following Coastal Creative and I love seeing their content and I love seeing like good restaurants. I went to Armature Works in Tampa, which is like a really cool food hall, and they have all these really great restaurants, and I started checking out their Instagrams, and I loved seeing how really curated their like feed, I think, is that what it's called? Just like when you go to their Instagram page, it's super beautiful images, but then when you click and see their story or their little story options that you can watch, that's where you get to see more of that raw behind the scenes content, and that's like, chef's kiss of like blending it together, like you said.
Absolutely. And another thing too with Reels, the beauty with Reels is if you are so into having an aesthetic feed, capture something that's a little bit more organic, but upload a cover photo that's highly produced and kind of stays within brand and kind of fits within your feed still and those guidelines that you've set forward for yourself. But you can still kind of marry the two in a way and just test and try it out. That's the biggest thing I tell people is just test. Just go for it, try it, peel the curtain back if you've never peeled it back before, and just see what works. But yeah, kind of get creative with those different solutions, and you can kind of marry the two in a way.
Beautiful. All right, our last segment as we wrap up the show is Nailed It or Failed It. I have a couple of pieces of content that I want to share with you and talk about, and you can just tell me if they nailed it or failed it, and probably like one or two of them will dive a little bit deeper and I'll hear what you said.
Cool.
All right, so this first one is Braden Wallaki on LinkedIn recently posted a picture of himself crying, and it went viral, where he is the CEO of an agency where he had to fire a couple of people. And this guy got absolutely destroyed. There were like unbelievable and hilarious like remakes of this where somebody took pictures of themselves crying and being like, when I wake up hungover, or like just stupid stuff. I'm trying to remember some of the really funny ones.
Did they turn his face into a meme, or did they recreated it?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
They memed the concept.
Oh, poor guy.
And so this is a great example, I think, like a case study, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, I mean, I feel bad for this guy in a sense. A lot of people are like, screw this guy.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel bad for his employees that he had to fire.
Right.
Nailed it or failed it, in your opinion?
I think he, I have a couple thoughts on this.
Okay, yeah. It's a hard one.
It's hard because part of me is like, I've seen this on LinkedIn before. I've seen someone starting out their piece of content with, this is the most vulnerable thing I've ever shared. And to me, I'm like, if you have to say that, maybe there's a reason you're sharing this in this way to be, I don't know what it is. But I feel bad for him at the same time, because unless this guy's a trained actor, he probably didn't make himself cry on his own. So something's probably going on. And so kudos to him for peeling the curtain back and sharing that with his audience. And it stinks that he got such bad, feedback on that. But I think it's important just to be encouraged to share these moments. And hopefully he encouraged other people to share those moments too. So I'd say nailed it.
I say failed it. I know,
Why?
controversy. It creates good content, Cassie.
I know.
I think the intention was good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the delivery was off. And reading the post, he didn't say anything that was that egregious.
Mm-hmm.
He should have focused more on the employees and less on himself.
Yeah.
And it's just, unfortunately, it's trial and tribulation. Like, this is one of those things that I don't know if the CEO was the right person to test this. I think about PandaDoc. We are now at 800 employees. We are close to 1,000.
Yeah.
Or we're getting closer to 1,000. And if we, at some point in the future, go public and our CEO does something like this and it tanks our stock, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's the same situation, but it's as a leader learning how to inject yourself into the limelight. And I think that there is more and more of a culture of being emotional on social media, and it just doesn't land. And it backfires.
Yeah.
And I think there are ways to be emotional in front of your own coworkers face to face, because like I think of the 10,000 people that commented, and let's say half of those are like, you are a scumbag, you are fake, you took a picture of yourself like while you're crying. What are you, a 13-year-old like schoolgirl? Like, I bet so many of those people would not say a dang thing if they were face to face with him.
Yeah.
There's that disconnect when it's a social post that just doesn't land when you're face to face with somebody who's crying. Or even if it was a video where he like, you see people choke up all the time.
Yeah.
But I think that's where he failed. It was the delivery. And I think if my CEO were to pull something like this, I'd be like, dude, you should have talked to me first. Yeah. I'm like the guy taking swings on social media. Yeah. Wish you would have like consulted me, man.
Well, that's so true. I think people don't realize the impact of sharing some certain things, and you have to certainly be careful. And so I don't know if he got feedback first before he shared that, but that's probably something
You should have taken your advice though. Of
Right.
Maybe workshop this.
Sure.
A little
sure.
bit. 3 close confidants you trust. Can you just evaluate at least the post?
Yes. Well, it's so true what you said about it being very kind of self-centered in a way. You know, it's him crying. It's him sharing about, oh, I had to do this, and this is how I feel after the situation. And I'm like, how do those people feel that you just fired? You know, it's nothing to do with them. And so I don't know what his goal was for this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a little 50-50 there.
Yeah, it's hard.
I know.
In some ways he failed, some ways he nailed.
Yeah,
That's what's fun
exactly.
about this. All right, let's go through these next ones. I think that one is the most interesting, but Aerie takes to TikTok to spread positivity in quarantine. So this actually was from a while ago, but they've continued to keep this up. My wife loves Aerie, self-disclosure, so I'm not totally unbiased here, but nailed it or failed it with them trying to use influencers and the idea of like body positivity in Aerie Reel, because a lot of people actually don't like that.
Yeah, I think they've done a good job since the beginning. I can remember when this brand started forever ago. They've kind of been on that level of creating more of an inclusive experience. More recently, they've gotten a little bit more bold with their messaging and stuff around that, but they've always done a good job. It's not inconsistent, you know, not to mention the other competitor, but they've kind of switched gears recently, and it's like, are you doing this because it's now popular or what? But they've kind of stuck with it all along. So that makes me think, okay, their consistent message has kind of rang true time and time again. And right now they're kind of creating another campaign to continue that message. And so I like it.
Okay.
Nailed.
I think nailed it, and I love your explanation. And I think this next one is, I think, failed, but this is how Radio Shack's not safe for work tweets is plugging their new marketing strategy. I don't know if you followed it. I don't know if you heard of it.
Yeah, I have, and I failed. I'm not a fan. It doesn't resonate with me. I remember going to Radio Shack with my dad as a kid. I have fond memories, and this just ruined it for me. So failed. Yeah.
And I think this goes back to what you said is like when you're a brand and you try to pivot your entire identity and you're like so publicly doing it, you're going to face a lot of backlash about it. So I think my advice here, just based on like our conversation, is like when you're trying to be vulnerable and try something new, ask yourself if this aligns with your core identity from day one. Is this built into your company's values that you've been showing like Aerie has from its inception? If so, then I think you can test it. I think you can try to push the boundaries of vulnerability there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and two, like, let's just say, for example, you had a CEO or your company was ran a different way at the beginning, and now it's kind of shifting gears. That's fine, but don't do it so abruptly, and do it strategically in a way that doesn't make it look like you're just capitalizing on a trend or consumer need or want currently. And so there's kind of a whole PR strategy that can go in behind that. But you have to be very careful with how you do it. So
yep. And Radio Shack, I checked their Twitter. They have 300,000 followers. And I think when they started doing this, they had 200,000. So I think also failed in the metrics because that's only 100,000 followers on Twitter. So
failed.
I think failed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all I've got for this episode. Cassie, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having
people
me.
want to find you, they can check out Marketing Happy Hour wherever you get your podcast from. They can also find you on LinkedIn, Cassie Tucker, and all social media platforms.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Travis. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll be back in a couple weeks with a new episode.
Thanks for listening to the Customer Engagement Lab, brought to you by PandaDoc. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or connect with us on LinkedIn. We love to hear from you and what you think of the show.